From game day to signing day, breaking down every snap and all the news on Alabama's top football recruits. It's time for Crimson and Blue Chips with your host, John Garcia Jr.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into a fresh and free edition of Crimson and Blue Chips. I'm your host, John Garcia Jr., and we are the audio authority on all things Alabama football as well as recruiting. Today for you, we've got a new commitment to discuss. Caden Clark out of Ohio. We'll get to him. Class of 2020. We've got some hypothetical games to play with here as we transition from recruiting to the team. Look, guys, football season's here. August 1st. It's that time of year, so we're really going to start turning the page in a hurry towards the Crimson Tide football team, especially since we got our announcements out of the way. And if you hadn't figured out by now, we are on YouTube. We have switched platforms, and we are now going 3 times a week, which is why on this Wednesday, you have a fresh and free edition of the podcast. Producer Kev is going to spend a lot of time with us today. He's got more questions coming in his way, so that's really cool. We love how you guys are interacting with our whole staff, not just me. That's really a blessing. So we'll revisit Q&A plenty before today's show is done. You guys submitted a lot of questions. We'll talk plenty about this new commitment, and we're going to play a game. We're going to kind of look back at some recruiting misses technically and kind of how they panned out, and maybe even formulate an all decommitment team, if you will, from Alabama. So kind of a fun look back just to see what in the world happened to some of these guys. So a bit of an odd edition of Crimson and Blue Chips coming at you right now. So not so surprising news coming down the pike in Tuscaloosa. Another commitment for the University of Alabama, but this time in the class of 2020. And don't look now, but that class of 2020's got a pretty solid foundation, both in-state and out. Caden Clark comes to Alabama as an out-of-state commitment, 6'5", 245-pound tight end from the state of Ohio, a 3-star right now, a high 3-star top 10 tight end in the country on 24/7 Sports in our 2020 rankings, but I can let it out right now. Those rankings are going to be updated. Doesn't mean I know where Caden Clark's going to be ranked, but I literally submitted emails for our new rankings in the class of 2020 and even 21. I don't know if I should say it, but I said it. So obviously we're getting our preseason stuff up to date in multiple classes. But right now, the number 6 tight end in the country for the class of 2020, as I said, 6'5", 245. So, we talk about these commitments at different positions and how they kind of paint us a picture on the current state of the program and the future of the program. And sometimes we can almost delve into philosophies based on the type of kids that Alabama is taking on the commitment list. Now, I will warn everybody listening and watching, look, we don't know a ton about this kid. We haven't talked about him on the podcast, anything like that. But 6'5", 245, looks like an inline tight end, more of a classic throwback tight end, if you will. He definitely holds his own as a blocker. This is not a new age basketball tight end who's going to split out and be cute on the outside. Now, he's in the trenches. He's mixing it up with the big guys, but he does have some decent receiving ability as well. So it seems like a true balanced type of tight end, more in your Hale Henches mode compared to your O.J. Howard, Miller Forrestalls of the world. Speaking of his tape, we'll play a little bit of it, and we'll bring in Producer Kev. I know you got to like the first clip on his huddle from his spring game. Caden he's going right into the cut blocks as a tight end. It's not something you see every day.
No, it's not, but it's a great way to start out a highlight film there with the cut block. And then he goes into some other more inline blocking, and he looks like he's got some pretty good blocking skills for a tight end.
Yeah, and remember, 6'5", 245, 2 years of high school ball remaining. So, I mean, this kid could be, 260 by the time he gets to Alabama with an interesting skill set. And again, if you read into it a little too much, which we probably shouldn't do, but hey, we're CABC, this is what we do, maybe more of a pro-style look moving forward. Maybe the post-Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts offense looks more like a classic Alabama offense. Perhaps This has nothing to do with this new commitment. Either way, if it does, you heard it here first. But always good to recruit out of the state, especially early. And I urge you guys to read Bama Online, Hank South's latest story on Caden. Bill Green helps us out in Ohio. He did a great job tracking him down and kind of getting the behind the scenes. It looks like Caden was ready to pop during Champions Cookout 2.0, which he did attend over the weekend. But he did his due diligence and went public on Tuesday, the same day as our announcement here at Crimson and Blue Chip. So another commitment for 2020 for Alabama. The class is kind of quietly rolling. We talk so much about 2019, and rightfully so. Look, number one class in the country. Everything's kind of clicking. All of that. It's great. But don't look now at that class of 2020. Loading up very, very well. Again, in-state and out. 3 right on the 24/7 Sports Composite. 6 verbal commitments representing 4 states. This is obviously the first Ohio, but you got 3 in-state, 1 from Florida, 1 from Georgia. So states covered, and you're branching out a little bit in Ohio. So Alabama's class of 2020 putting in some solid work early here in the recruiting process. So we'll hear much more from Caden Clark and the crew moving forward. But I really want to jump into kind of the point of not the point of today's show, but the basis of today's show. Besides Q&A, which is always our foundation, but I was scanning Twitter on Tuesday, and I came across a story about Ricky Town and him settling in at Pitt. For those who don't remember, Ricky Town, of course, once committed to Alabama. I think he was the last quarterback committed to Alabama before Lane Kiffin got hired. And the story goes, as we learned later on, that basically the moment Lane Kiffin was hired, Ricky Town was deuces. He was not about to deal with Lane. Remember, Ricky Town was from California, very familiar with Lane Kiffin, and there was a reason that Lane wasn't recruiting him before that point. So once that happened, I think it was kind of a mutual decision for Bama and Ricky Town to part ways, only to get Blake Barnett after that. So quite the year in quarterback recruiting for Alabama a few cycles ago. But it got me to thinking, man, you lose track of some of these guys who were once committed to Alabama. So as we try to merge recruiting and team news on this show, what better way to do it as we are just 48 hours from camp than looking at the guys who were once committed to sign at Alabama, yet ended up signing elsewhere. And we're going to bring producer Kev back in on this one. Let's play it very simply. We'll go kind of position by position and fill out a guy. Not all 22 positions. We don't got time for that. But we can go quarterback, running back, receiver, one lineman on each side of the ball, maybe even a specialist in this exercise, Kevin. So Ricky Town kind of got the ball rolling, but I don't think he's the quarterback we're going to go with on the all-Alabama decommitment team.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I think that's easily Jake, right?
Jake. Yeah, Jake Fromm would be my pick for the former commit.
Yeah.
The quarterback position, definitely.
Yeah, Ricky, no disrespect to Ricky Town, but yeah, that one was kind of a no-brainer. And it's funny, when we were kind of going over our game plan for the show, we were talking about Blake Barnett as if he was one of these guys, but technically, no, he was a transfer. He was
technically a commit.
Yes,
left after 4 games.
He was a commit and never backed off of that pledge, and he did end up signing, of course, at Alabama. And I think combined, Ricky Town, Blake Barnett, are we at 8 universities so far? If you include the JUCOs, right? So,
if you include JUCOs for both of them, yeah, I believe we're at 8.
Yeah, so in the cynical journalistic storyline book, I'm going to need Pitt and USF to both get their 6 wins and play each other.
Play in a bowl.
In some kind of DollarGeneral.com, bowl. Somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I need that to happen, just for closure purposes. But yeah, Jake Fromm, obviously, look, that was a big loss for Alabama at the time. Now, looking back, this could be a whole different podcast because you lose Jake Fromm and then you get Tua Tagovailoa. So, there's a lot of ways to look at that year in terms of recruiting, but at the time and up until you knew who Tua was, that Jake Fromm loss was massive. There was real concern for that class of 2017. At that point, I didn't know if they would finish number one, and obviously they went on to overcome that in a very, very big way. So on the all decommitment team, certainly quarterback Jake Fromm makes sense. And I think, Kev, running back is even more obvious, right?
Yeah, I would imagine. I'm going with Cam Akers, the former Alabama commit, now at FSU.
Yeah, man.
Started games as a true freshman.
You remember at one point, and this will, the more time goes on, the more ridiculous this is. At one point, for those who don't remember, Najee Harris and Cam Akers were each committed together for the University of Alabama.
That's scary.
There's a lot of stories and examples of the embarrassment of riches, and you can go to the receiver class that year. You can go to back-to-back five-star linebackers out of Auburn High School. You can go to multiple Elite 11 MVP quarterbacks coming in, whatever. But those two committed at the same time was downright ridiculous, and everybody knew it. And as time wore on, though, it kind of felt like, all right, one of these guys is going to back off. And the kid from Mississippi was certainly more likely to do so, despite what anyone from Ann Arbor would like to say about that. So, yeah, running back pretty easy. Now you get to receiver. I think it gets interesting there, and the California Golden Bears are involved with, I think, the top two candidates. Demetrius Robertson, who, of course, just transferred to the University of Georgia, and Keenan Allen, right? Keenan Allen.
Yeah. I'm going with Keenan Allen. And then a little extra piece of knowledge for the Keenan Allen one is who was Keenan Allen's recruiter?
Who?
Tosh Lupoy.
At Cal.
Full
circle status right here on CABC. You see why I needed help, guys? You see why we needed to expand, bring in more listeners, give producer Kev a microphone, because these are the stats that we have been getting for years, and we just needed to bring it to the light, as they say. How about that? Full circle status. You got to wonder how a kid from North Carolina ends up at Cal. And it's look, I mean, Cal was good back then, but it's not like it was USC. It's not like it was even, Oregon or even Washington or Stanford at the time. I mean, this was Cal post Aaron Rodgers.
Cal.
Yeah, exactly. So, Tosh Lupoy, not terrible at recruiting. Yeah, I think very close call. Weird that the Cal Golden Bears are in this conversation, but yeah, I think in the Nick Saban era, or in the last decade plus, let's say, Keenan Allen, Demetrius Robertson, definitely the top two wide receivers who decommitted from Alabama. Of course, obviously Keenan Allen's had the better career, and he's in the NFL. He's already done what we think Demetrius Robertson can do, but man, what stings with Robertson is, he's committed, and then he decommits, and then at the end of the cycle, you think you're going to get him again. He sets 3 official visits, takes none of them, so he's in Alabama all the way through, and he surprises everyone going to Cal instead of UGA. And then 2 years later, he's time to transfer. He's going to be recruited again, and Alabama's involved. We hear good things, and then ultimately, to the surprise of no one, he ends up right back at UGA. So Keenan Allen, just resume-wise, definitely the pick. But if you go with the heartstrings in this era of recruiting, I don't know. I think Demetrius Robertson has a little bit on Keenan, especially if Demetrius factors into UGA playing Alabama at some point again in the postseason, whether it be the SEC championship or, of course, a rematch of the national championship. But that was certainly a good one. If we go to the line, we'll go O-line, D-line, I guess really quickly because there's a lot of names on the O-line.
Yeah, there's a bunch of names on the O-line, D-line. For the O-line, I don't know how to pronounce this name. Vinaya Talam. He goes to USC.
Vianney Talamaivo.
There we go.
Yeah, I remember that one. That was the first one that got us ready for Tua,
Yeah, exactly. So he was an Alabama commit. He was from Cali, but he flipped to USC and has now been he's been a 4-year starter at USC.
Yeah.
So he's helped them kind of get back to where they are now. And then if you wanted to put another one in there, Isaiah Prince. He's now at Ohio State. He started at Ohio State at right tackle the last 2 years. So
Yeah,
he played.
that one was really that was all late in the cycle too. I remember that. It was like he committed and it was a big deal coming off of that Bama official and then boom, he flipped to Ohio State like I mean, I don't have the dates in front of me, but it had to be a couple of weeks after that.
He committed to Alabama 13 days before signing day.
Right. So there you go. So 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. That's that one. You talk about sting factor again. Talamaivo more productive at his new home, but sting factor wise, maybe Isaiah Prince takes some cake there. Certainly a lot of names on the O line. Notori Johnson comes to mind recently. Heck, look at this class right now. Evan Neal, De'Avi Hammond are technically decommits, although stories aren't quite finished there, so we'll kind of leave them off the list for now. Same thing with Trey Sanders, talking about running backs, but Cam Akers is a better prospect anyway. D line, I'll take the lead here. This is a hard one. There's a lot of good ones, but I think the most famous, and this one, if we're talking sting factors, we got to let sting factors win one of these battles. Darius Philon. Bama pulls his off. He's committed to Bama. Bama pulls his offer, asks him to gray shirt late in the cycle. I want to say very close to National Signing Day. And he says, "Nah, I'm good. I'm an SEC D lineman on scholarship from the jump, not pulling a Jerez Parks." And goes to Arkansas, has a great career, and is pretty much a solid starter in the NFL if memory serves. So I think
Yeah,
that one hurts Bama a little
he
bit.
he played 2 years at Arkansas. He ended up being an All-American in 2014, and he was drafted in the 6th round by the Chargers.
Yeah, there you go. That's why he's the producer. I think honestly, and in the surprising to be mentioned in this category department, I'd say Jonathan Ledbetter. He's a guy that when he was committed to Alabama, I believe it was class of 16. It felt good. It felt solid. He was just a rock solid guy. You expected him to develop into a contributor, but maybe not a superstar. I'll tell you what, man. Watching all these SEC reruns from the championship game, Jonathan Ledbetter was wrecking shop against Alabama in that natty. Kind of a Kirby Smart special. I believe he followed Kirby from Bama to Georgia there. It wasn't a huge surprise, but at the time, sting factor wasn't as big because you didn't think he was going to develop into what he has. So kudos to John Ledbetter. And I guess Kirby Smart's scouting and retention with his new staff, because I think that one is, when we look back, that one will be up there, I think, in that category of all-time Bama decommits based on what they did at their following institution. Let's move to linebacker, and the asterisk here, I'm drawing an asterisk for those who don't see me on camera. How do you draw an asterisk, right?
Yeah, so,
The asterisk here, of course, is Reuben Foster, right? Like, does he count?
yeah.
Does he count or no?
I
Because
mean,
if he counts, there's no. I mean, we're done with this position, right?
yeah. I mean, I'll give it to him because I mean, the one time Bama commit flips to Auburn,
Gets
flips
tatted.
back to gets tatted, gets the Auburn tat on the forearm, and then flips back to Bama. So
Not a
I'm
terrible run at Bama for him.
no, not at all.
Yeah. And congratulations to Reuben for getting through the off the field stuff and looking like he's going to be another major contributor for the Niners under John Lynch. Pretty cool out there out west. And then going to DB, I think that's a tough one too. One of
There's a lot
the
of good names.
Yeah, a lot of good names. One of the candidates switched positions and was really good in college. You know what? I think I'll throw out a sleeper name just before we crown anybody. Stephen Roberts, man. He out of Opelika, was committed to Bama for a while, and I was actually speaking at an event at Bryant-Denny Stadium when he flipped to Auburn. And addressing the crowd, I broke the news that Stephen Roberts had flipped to Auburn, and nobody cared. Nobody gave a crap that Stephen Roberts flipped to Auburn. And I was kind of like, dang, man, like a little part of me, journalistically, cynically, and if you don't know I'm cynical by now, sorry. Cynically, I was like, man, this guy's going to get a pick against Bama. It's going to be a big deal in the Iron Bowl one day. I think he did end up getting a pick against Alabama. He was a contributor as a punt returner as well. But I was just like, man, no love for Stephen Roberts. But I thought he was always a solid DB, and he ended up as, I believe, the captain of the secondary for Auburn and had some nice production. And he's having his cup of coffee in the NFL right now. So kind of an interesting one that again, kind of like Ledbetter at the time, literally, Bama fans didn't care. But he turned out to be a pretty good player. Who are some other names on this all-time list here, Kev?
For the DBs, we can go Artie Burns. That was a big one. Stud.
Yeah, still a stud in the NFL.
Still is a stud. He was drafted 25th overall by the Steelers after his pretty good career at Miami.
See, Miami fans, it wasn't all bad with Al Golden.
Yeah,
it wasn't all bad.
They had some bright spots with the tie.
But it also does suck when you're not winning games and your players are still drafted high. Something's off at that point.
Yeah, talk to Florida about that as well.
That's true, especially in the secondary.
Yep.
And on this list, and this is, you talk about sting factor. I'm going to get punched in the face virtually. When you're talking about Alabama under Nick Saban, it's not all perfect, just like it wasn't all bad for Al Golden at Miami. Specialists and field goal kicking is a big deal here. And, you know, Bama lost kickers 2 years in a row in recruiting. Like, that has that ever happened? I don't have the archive of the history of college football recruiting, but getting 2 kickers committed and then having both of them flip in consecutive years, I've never seen anything like that. Bama has all the records, even the bad ones in recruiting, apparently. Brandon Ruiz flipped the following year, but the guy we're talking about, Eddie Pinheiro, University of Florida, went viral kicker.
Viral video star.
What a story. JUCO soccer player, not on the football team, but still kicking. How many years of eligibility? It was super hard to crunch those numbers. And then he declares early for the NFL because he's great at Florida. And was again, we just talked about good players despite not being good record-wise. Jim McElwain had some of those for sure, as you alluded to. And I mean,
small tidbit. If you've never been to the Swamp to watch them play, they actually were chanting Eddie Pinheiro's name this past year when he was kicking. So
like good for him, but also wow. I mean, that's how low it got for the offensive production at UF.
And we're not talking like they're chanting his name kicking extra field goals. They're chanting his name kicking extra points. Like,
I would have declared too. I mean, he's a legend. They might build a statue. It might be Tebow, Warfel, Spurrier, Pinheiro.
You imagine
helmet off, hands in the air, you know, with a cell phone in his hand.
Viral video star.
Oh man, it's great. Yeah, you want to know what happened at UF? They were chanting for field goals against, you know, Vandy. That's where it was. That's where it was. So you limp into 2 SEC title games and you think it's all good, and then you're chanting for field goals against Vandy. Welcome to Florida Gator football in 2017. So I'm not as big on the Dan Mullen bandwagon as the rest of the world, but something had to be done. I think that was pretty clear. So anyways, we just wanted to kind of put that together for you. Actually, wait, we have another asterisk. Let me draw another one. Hold on. All right. There's one more asterisk. So we had position players, specialists, and
athletes.
Athlete. See, if we're talking recruiting, we got to add the athlete category, right? Guys who don't necessarily have one position or could have played multiple positions. So this guy, I think there's only really one pick here, right?
Absolutely. My one pick's going to be former Alabama commit. They wanted him to play DB, but he wanted to play quarterback. So he ended up going to none other than Georgia Tech to play quarterback.
Triple option, baby.
Triple option, Justin Thomas.
Yes, Prattville High School, in-state prospect, but yeah, he can't blame him, right? He wanted
Right.
to play quarterback, and you know what? 10 years later, or however long it's been, not that long, but that's still a big issue in recruiting. If you've got a kid who's super athletic, who's played quarterback for his high school, which again, these high school coaches' jobs are to win games. So guess what? Your best player, quarterback, running back, receiver, you're getting them the ball in some capacity. It's still hard to get those guys to budge off of that preferred position. So, Justin Thomas is certainly the shining example for Alabama, I guess, in that category, and definitely deserves a spot on the all decommitment team. That's a pretty good squad right there. I think they can win some games. I think they can go 9-3, and play in a decent bowl game, get some good swag, some Xbox One, something like that. But how about that offensive backfield, man? Jake Fromm, Cam Akers, and any of those Cal receivers, either one. It's pretty legit. Pretty legit group of decommitments from Alabama, and that's how you know. It's it's a good recruiting school. I mean, the all decommitment team would be a top 5 class in the country, and that's Bama, right? So anyway, just really wanted to go outside the box a little bit. I saw the Ricky Town tweet, and I was just like, man, I completely forgot about him for a little bit. And, what's he been up to? Obviously, for quarterbacks, it's kind of thrown at your face what they've been up to, but not some of these other guys. So as you can see, some of them went on to great things, and some of them, not so much. Anyway, let's move to Q&A, and we'll wrap up today's program. Well, Producer Kev, you got some more questions headed your way, so why don't I tee you up on the first one. This is coming via Facebook from Timothy Cameron. Thank you for following us on Facebook and interacting. If you'd like to do so, just do it. Here he goes. Cameron says, would love some OL perspective from Producer Kev. This is another really good question. What are his thoughts on the Jalen versus Tua battle, and how does that affect the O-line? How does the O-line feel about it? Basically, what Cameron's asking, does the anticipation of Jalen breaking out on a run cause them to play a certain way? And who would Producer Kev prefer to play for? These are interesting here. We're gonna get a little VIP right here with Producer Kev. What do you got?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that the Jalen Tua battle, like Saban said, I think it's going to come down to really who the team respects and who the team is kind of following. I've said before that I think that Jalen has the upper hand when it comes to winning the team. He's been there longer. He's 26-2. I mean, he's been there. He's been proven. He's played in 2 national championships. He was the offensive MVP of the SEC and the offensive rookie of the year his freshman year. So I think he's got the upper hand when it comes to winning the team. But like I said before, also I think that eventually Tua will become the starter. And then as far as for the O-line preparing, I think kind of you're going to be preparing for both of them kind of the same, because Jalen can run, but Tua can also run. So I think in the same hints, you're going to kind of be preparing for him the same kind of way. But you do kind of – it is a tricky situation when you have a quarterback that can run as an offensive lineman, because if you're in a pass play and you're pass pro blocking, and all of a sudden your quarterback takes off and run, like, you don't necessarily know that at the time because you don't have eyes in the back of your head. You're focused on blocking the man, and then your quarterback takes off running, and then all of a sudden your guy's going the opposite way of where he was originally going because he sees the quarterback taking off. So it does definitely kind of hurt an offensive lineman to have a scrambling quarterback because, like I said, you can't always see where they're going when they start to run. So you could be blocking a guy right into the way that the quarterback's running.
Yeah, and
So
Producer Kev is blocked for both types of quarterbacks. I mean, at this
yeah,
school right here, this helmet right here, I mean, we had some I'm not going to say any names in case my brothers are listening, go Cougars. But there were some statues on that roster, and we had some dynamic athletes take snaps as well. So you actually have experience in the
oh
same
yeah,
year blocking for both. Like we had I guess a quarterback controversy. It wasn't quite as discussed as this one, but both guys played, both guys got their chances, so you got to literally experience, I guess, the uncertainty of the scrambler versus the pocket guy. So in that, with what you said, so is that another notch on the Tua side of the equation here?
yeah, I think so because he's gonna be sitting back there looking to throw, and not that Jalen can't throw because I'm not saying that, but you know they do consider Jalen more of the dual threat running quarterback.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's going to help Tua out a little bit too. Is his pocket presence and his ability to throw the ball from inside the pocket.
What bothers the O-line more? A quarterback who maybe isn't as athletic but tries to do too much and takes a sack of, let's say, 16 yards, versus the quarterback who is dynamic and a better runner and navigates the pocket a little bit better, but because of that, like you said, you don't have eyes in the back of your head, and you end up, you know, leading your guy into like a blindsiding hit of the quarterback. Do you feel worse as the blocker in scenario A with the big sack or B with the big hit?
Mm.
If they're both your fault.
If they're both my fault, then I'm going to go with the big hit because you don't ever want to get your quarterback killed.
Okay.
If he's taking a sack because he's unathletic, then I don't really feel that bad. But if he gets killed because he's running around and I blocked a guy into him, then yeah, I'm feeling kind of bad about that.
Roger that. So, yeah, good answers from Producer Kev, as always. And we'll continue. We'll get over to Twitter now. Actually, let's go over to the email. Kev can probably help with this one as well. This is coming from Willie Carter via the email. And once again, it's cabcpod@gmail.com for those preferring that side of the coin. It's Willie again from Chicago. Was wondering about a recruit that you mentioned briefly last week. The defensive tackle from Hawaii, Fa'atui Tuitele. Not sure if I spelled that correctly. Don't worry, Willie. They can't see your email. Is he a lock for Bama? Also, was he at the opening a few weeks ago? And if so, how did he perform? Lastly, I was really hoping Ben Davis would be a star at Bama. Can you tell us about his skills when he was in high school? And what were some of the limitations then that may now be keeping him from seeing the field? Good questions in there from Willie. With Tuitele, I don't think he's a Bama lock, Willie, only in that I think Alabama is kind of looking ahead. It doesn't mean he's not number one on the board or number two on the board, but the guy we know is higher on the board is Sopsher, and he's a guy who's deciding at the end. He's deciding on National Signing Day or thereabouts. So that means when it comes to numbers, and we know numbers are tight, that it's going to be tough to slide in multiple guys before that point because obviously you want to leave a theoretical spot open for a guy like that. So Tuitele, the Leo kid who's committed to Texas A&M, is certainly in this conversation. Siaki Ika is in this conversation. There's a lot of D linemen, interior D linemen, on the board here. And Bama's already got several committed when you think of the DJ Dales of the world, the Rashad Cheneys of the world. So there's not a ton of spots left at those positions. And again, the top dog is going to wait it out. So even trying to flip Nathan Pickering is something that should be involved in this question. So there's a lot of names. That's the point. So I'm just not sure, without necessarily blowing it up this offseason, which we hear Tuitele did not do, specifically at Bama. I think it just makes him kind of a bubble guy. I could see him in the class. I could see him as first guy not in the class, but he was not at the opening, so we did not get a fresh look at him a few weeks back. And then with Ben Davis, look, man, you weren't the only one who thought he would be a star at Alabama. I think he was a top 10 easy evaluation coming out of high school for me. And look, we don't know if we were right or wrong, but at the time, if it felt easy, it was still easy, right or wrong. So I'll stand by that. You guys know I'm pretty transparent with that stuff. It was an easy eval. There was compared to Mac Wilson and the rest of that class, there was not a question who the top prospect was. It was 6'4", 220-pound Ben Davis, who could run like the wind. He could hit. He could cover. He could catch passes as a wide receiver. He did a bit of everything. It all looked easy. His father was the leading tackler in the history of the University of Alabama, or still is. Everything just kind of lined up as a very simple evaluation. Great kid, smart kid, hard worker. Checked every box that we look for, and even some that we don't necessarily look for. So he had all the skills coming out of high school. I would guess the only thing that was a deterrent, and looking back, perhaps we should have weighed it more, was his competition level. He was playing west of Tuscaloosa, Gordo High School, smaller school football, where he was simply bigger, stronger, faster than everybody. So perhaps some of that we took as gospel, maybe more than we should. But again, on the flip side of that one, he goes to the Alabama-Mississippi game, has a great week. He goes to the Under Armour All-America game, has a really good week. So the red flag moment never really hit. There was never really that one time where he got run over or somebody shook him and broke his ankles, or he always looked like he belonged when he did go out and compete with the best, even though locally he did not play against the best, if that makes sense. So perhaps there was some limitations if we would have gotten a larger sample of him playing against fellow elite competition. The rumors we hear out of Tuscaloosa typically focus on the game in terms of speed and the jump from college or from high school to college and SEC football. We've heard of that. We've heard about the position changes affecting his progression. Let's also mention this, that he's dealt with multiple changes on his coaching staff too. And that sometimes gets forgotten when we're talking about guys like this. But hey, we talk about that a lot with the Jalen Tua thing at quarterback, right? There's different coordinators here. It's a level playing field, right? For these guys with Mike Loxley, Josh Gaddis, Dan Enos. Gaddis and Enos have only the current samples to go off of, and Loxley has the game samples from last year, but from afar as the wide receivers coach. So, that affects defensive players as well when there's a lot of coaching transition. Ben Davis has moved positions. He's played inside. He's played outside. But I think we can all agree, Willie, that if it's going to click for Ben and he's going to prove us right or wrong, it's kind of got to happen now. I think that's become pretty clear. But a very good question coming in from Willie from Chicago. Great city, especially in the summertime. Thank you for asking on cabcpod@gmail.com. Let's hit Twitter for the remainder of the program here. We will begin with Luke Ferguson. Oh, here we go, Luke. Producer Kev's coming back in on this one. Luke says, in your opinion, who is the most important player this year? Not necessarily the best, but most important. My pick is Mac Wilson. First of all, let's acknowledge this. This is a really freaking hard question, right? Can we?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's put that out there, because you can go one of the quarterbacks. You could really make the case for the quarterback who loses the battle, and that's worthy of an entire show if we wanted to do that. The quarterback who loses the battle could very well be the most important in terms of not dividing the locker room and all that stuff. But even if you go defensively, which is something that I wouldn't like to just jump to, because I think, Jonah Williams, Damian Harris, the guys who are captain-type guys, I think are going to be really important. Heck, Ross Piercebaker, who's going to now, play center. I think even if you eliminate all of them and you focus on defense, it's still hard to isolate just Mack Wilson. It's a good pick. It's a popular pick. I would imagine it would get a lot of votes on social media. But I'm not sure if I think Mack Wilson is more important than, let's say, Raekwon Davis. Or
That's
I could even make the argument for Deontay Thompson over Mack Wilson. Who you rolling with on that one, Kev?
for me. It's going to be Raekwon, just because that that group up front is young or no, they're not young, but they're inexperienced. And with Raekwon having the most experience out of that group, I think he's going to be pivotal in getting that group going. If he has a big year, I think there'll be multiple guys up there that can have big years. Quentin Williams and then Isaiah Buggs as well. But I think Raekwon's going to be the glue that holds that together.
Man, I was talking to Yancey Porter, who covers Ole Miss for 24/7, and obviously covers a lot of in-state kids in Mississippi. And I remember talking to Yancey when Raekwon was in high school, and everybody was like, "Man, this kid needs to play offensive tackle. What is he doing?" And to think of where he's come in such a short time as a D tackle, all SEC last year, and everybody in the world thinks he's going to be all SEC, all American, first round pick. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's what a turnaround for that kid who did not look like that or play like that in high school.
No, not at all. In high school, I said he could be a 3-and-done left tackle, and now he's probably going to be a 3-and-done defensive tackle.
Yeah, it's like we talked about with Justin Thomas. I mean, sometimes when these kids stick to their guns and go with their gut, there's success stories everywhere. Now, there's a lot of failures everywhere too, like John Franklin III. But there's all sorts of stories. It's such a pivotal thing in recruiting that I think doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, heck, number one player in 2020 in the state, Jason Jones, who's committed to Alabama. I think it feels like Raekwon Davis, and that's ironically the guy he looks up to the most and his idol. I think the guy could be an NFL guard, but the kid loves defense. So maybe he is Raekwon Davis 2.0. I don't think so, but we'll see. That one still has a couple more years to play out. But anyway, definitely Raekwon in this conversation for most important. And like I said, I can make the argument for Deontay Thompson. You talked about a revamped D-line. How about the secondary? I mean, he's the most experienced dude coming back, and he's got 2 starts under his belt. And no disrespect to the linebacker position, but you're going to rotate linebackers more, and you're going to have specialists at linebackers more than you will in the secondary. So while Mack Wilson only has a couple of starts under his belt as well, if memory serves, after the Sean Deion Hamilton injury last year, there's less guys for him to coordinate if he is to be that guy. We know he's the play caller, but again, let's see if he earns the rest of those roles, because play caller versus captain versus tone setter, all very different things on a defense. Sometimes you get a C.J. Mosley who is all of those things, or a Rolando McClain who is all of those things, but it doesn't necessarily happen that way. It has to be organic. Heck, last year it was kind of like Minka Fitzpatrick's role. It wasn't necessarily any linebacker's role, especially after that Sean Deion injury. So keep that in mind. So Mack would have to patrol theoretically less guys, even if he assumes all 3 of those roles at linebacker, than Deontay Thompson would at safety. Not to mention getting his own reps, working in himself, and kind of on that same trajectory up that we think he and Mack Wilson are very capable of. He's on that same track, same year. If you think about it, and if you really look at it, very similar in what they did last year in terms of flash plays. We don't have the body of work for these 2 guys. Most people give Mack the benefit of the doubt and worry about Deontay a little bit more as a green player, when in reality both have 2 starts under their belt, and both of them flashed a ton with interceptions, PBUs, sacks, whatever, but don't necessarily have the full body of work. I mean, watch that national championship game. If you look at the box, Mack Wilson's got 12 tackles, and you're like, man, All-American, next great backer at Bama. Watch the game. I'm not going to go over my charts, but watch the game. 8 play sample, 6 plays in the red. It's just not what we're used to. And again, not a great body of work here. And obviously these last few games that these 2 started, ridiculously pressure-packed and important and spotlighted. But if you're going to arise to that occasion and assume those roles, that's something that you play well underneath. And I think, again, Deontay Thompson will be in charge of more guys, and he's on almost the exact same path as Mac Wilson. But you can make a lot of arguments here. I'd go Raekwon before the other two, and I'd probably go Deontay a little bit before Mac on defense. But like I said, offensively, the loser of this quarterback battle could very well be the most important. But we don't have enough time to go through all of that. But very, very good question, Luke. You've been very thought-provoking here lately. Laquan chiming in here with a question. Wondering about offensive recruiting. I've heard that Bo Nix being George Pickens' 7-on-7 quarterback is an advantage for Auburn in his recruitment. If UA offers Robbie Ashford this season and then he commits, could that be a game changer for Pickens? I feel like the high school quarterback trumps the 7-on-7 quarterback. Laquan, every high school football coach in America is standing up and applauding you and offering you some T-shirts of their logos, some little rubber band wristbands, all of those things, because that's exactly what they want to hear. But in this scenario, I do not agree. I think the 7-on-7 quarterback trumps the high school quarterback only because of who that kid is. That 7-on-7 quarterback is Bo Nix, a kid who is 18 going on 30. They play for Cam Newton, for goodness sakes. There's so many more Auburn vibes and feels there than there would be with Robbie Ashford getting an Alabama offer. Of course, Robbie will be his quarterback at Hoover, but he hasn't been the quarterback at Hoover. This will be his first year as the starter as well. So there's actually more rapport and experience with Bo Nix and George than Robbie Ashford and George. But at the end of the day, George is going to be George. I don't think the quarterback room at either school is going to sway it one way or the other. And obviously, each Iron Bowl quarterback room in really good shape right now and in pretty darn good shape going forward, as far as we can tell. So I don't think that's going to split the difference between Alabama and Auburn. And we should throw Florida State and Georgia in that conversation as well, because those are going to be players for George Pickens. But I think for George, it's going to be about this season. I think the 2018 season will weigh heavily on his decision. How these teams look, how they throw, how they progress in getting the ball to receiver. Because look, I mean, he's got diva written all over him in a good way. Diva, like, give me the damn ball, Kobe Bryant, dog mentality, I'm going to make this play type of deal. Not necessarily T.O. doing sit-ups in the driveway, but some of the on-field things that you want. You want a receiver who demands the football. And that's George. I've seen him, I don't know if he wants me to say this, I've seen him yell at his quarterback up 1,000,000 points during the game. This dude is a competitor, wants the football, and heck, he deserves it. He's coming off of easily the best offseason of any receiver in the country, and I think that's how he's going to kind of project his recruitment. I think the seasons these teams have and how they look and the trajectory of their passing attacks will help determine whether or not somebody can flip him from Auburn. George Pickens is a dog, ladies and gentlemen, and I think it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It doesn't matter what certain elements present themselves, but I think the trajectory of that offense is going to play big here. Kev, you're a big fan of Pickens, huh?
Yeah, I do. I am a big fan of Pickens. I think his recruitment is going to definitely be interesting. I think that there's going to be a lot of Bama undertones in that recruitment, and I think be a lot of probably Florida State as well.
Yeah, he was there Saturday.
He was at Saturday Night Live. So I mean that
was
says
a big
a
deal.
lot that he was there instead of at Auburn. So
yeah, I think Auburn was real chest out when he started getting other offers and attention, late in the fall into this offseason. But as the offseason has progressed, I think there's starting to be a little bit of worry there. Just like Georgia with Jaden Hazelwood, there's starting to be a little bit of worry there. So certainly one to watch.
Yeah, they both had great off seasons.
Yeah, Bo Nix is great, but man, I think I could throw to those two on my
absolutely on my 7-on-7 team.
Yeah,
with no rush or anything, just sitting in a pocket throwing to Hazelwood and Pickens doesn't sound like a hard job.
Yeah, back shoulder left, back shoulder right. Here we go.
Yep.
Yeah. Brad Perkins next up, tweeting the show. John, a bunch of crystal ball picks are in and set for Daxton Hill to Bama lately. Any reason for the sudden change? Am I missing something? I know he's been to campus, and you yourself have mentioned him as a likely candidate for the class, but has something else happened? You know what, Brian? I think in the crystal ball game, in the projection game in this business, you look at the reality of it, and a lot of guys who make these picks, look, they want to be first. They want to get out in front of people. And being so close to a lot of these kids throughout their recruitments gives us insight on how they make their decisions. And there's certain schools and certain players that you just get a feel about, especially when their board changes. The players' board changes. And I think the biggest development lately, Brian, is that Oklahoma's out. I think that is the big shock factor here with Daxton Hill. Because if you've listened to the pod like it seems like you have, what have I been saying? Either he's staying in state, Oklahoma State, or he's going to Bama. Well, now, by every indication, the primary competition is Michigan. And no disrespect to Jim Harbaugh and company, but when it's a Michigan-Bama battle for a 5-star, number one as position, at a position of need for Alabama, people in this industry are going to say he's going to Bama. They're going to look at Deshaun Hand. They're going to look at Najee Harris. They're going to look at several battles where it was them two in the end, and it went Bama's way. There's precedent there, and recruiting analysts love precedent. Show me you've done it, and I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. And right now, Bama has the benefit of the doubt over the in-state schools and Michigan, especially when you know big, powerful Oklahoma, which gets every top kid in Oklahoma for the most part, is out. Once that news dropped and it became more of a Bama-Michigan battle with Oklahoma State as maybe the courtesy because Big Bro plays at Oklahoma State, once that became a little bit more of a reality at the end of the summer, I think people said, all right, this kid's probably going to Bama. So I think that's the feel from the industry. But, hey, it's not over yet. Some thought Dax would be committed by now. He's uncommitted. And he's got an official visit set up to Michigan early in the fall. So I think we might have to wait to see how that goes and then see where his recruitment stands. But obviously a monster target for both Alabama, Michigan, Oklahoma State, pretty much everybody out there because he is far and away the top safety in this class. All right, that'll do it. Thank you for – I love pods where we have questions on all platforms. We even had Instagram that we weren't even able to get to today. We'll get to that on Friday. We had Facebook, Twitter, Gmail in the house. I love it. That is what we are here at CABC. That's why we've been able to grow, and this is why we're able to take the next step, literally as of yesterday. So we appreciate all the support from our YouTube channel. Please check us out there. You can even ask questions on YouTube. If we remember to listen or remember to mark them down, we can answer those on the pod as well. But YouTube's going to be home base. So please hit that subscribe button. And again, you're not only going to get CABC, you're going to get supplemental content. We've got some archived interviews we're working on. We're going to have evaluation segments with coaches, parents, kind of throwbacks here and there. So we're really going to dip into the archives here and bring you some content that maybe becomes relevant as the season progresses. So perfect timing to start digging way back in the CABC box there. So a lot coming to YouTube. Please subscribe, comment, etc. And we're still everywhere else. We're working on iTunes, Crimson Clio. I know. We're working on iTunes very hard. I cannot stress how hard we're working on iTunes. We're going to try to get that back up and under our control. Again, we're as transparent as we can be with you guys, and that's just kind of where that is right now. So we're working on that as much as we possibly can. But as we said, 3 shows a week now, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So that means 48 hours from now, we'll be back at you with another edition of Crimson and Blue Chips. For Producer Kev, all our guests, and all our tweeters, texters, all of that, thank you very much. We'll see you in a couple of days. God bless. Garcia out.
You've been listening to Crimson and Blue Chips with John Garcia Jr. Be sure to listen in again Friday. Until then, keep up with all the news on Twitter at CABCPOD.